Ready, boss?
I'll wait for Sophia to take her seat. All right, ready? All right. Good evening, everybody. At this time, I'd like to commence the April 13th, 2026 meeting of the Lake Elmo Planning Commission. Meeting is now open. For you, those who are entering, if you want to speak publicly during the public hearing, we need you to fill out a form. And with that, the first item on our agenda, as always, is to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Next item is to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes?
Agenda.
I'm sorry, motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
All right, motion from Commissioner Charles, seconded by Commissioner Dunn, and the motion,
Call the question.
a call to question. Thank you. All in favor of approving the agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
And the agenda is passed. Next item is to approve the minutes from the March 9th meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes from 3/9/26 Planning Commission meeting?
Second.
We have a motion and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. And our next item would be moving to the public hearing, the zoning text amendment for short-term rentals. We'll hear from
Good
Jason
evening.
Stuple first.
Start with the short-term rentals, give you a little bit of an overview. As you know, we introduced this zoning text amendment to the bed and breakfast definition as part of city code housekeeping last year to essentially allow non-owner occupied businesses built to be in a bed and breakfast. That amendment was before you on January 27th, 2025, and it was not recommended for approval. So as you remember, housekeeping went forward without that. We removed it, and then we went to a workshop with the city council. And then also we came back and went to the planning commission to give an update for that workshop and just talk about feedback that we received from the city council. So the city council asked that we prepare an ordinance, bring it to the planning commission, and then to the city council to vote on. If you remember that, I believe it was 3-1 for the planning commission to move that forward. So currently, the current status is the city does not allow short-term rentals in any zoning district, but the city does permit bed and breakfast in most residential and mixed-use districts, with the minimum standards being that they have to be owner-occupied, single-family homes, not to exceed 5 rooms unless it's a conditional use permit. There's some parking requirements, and then they need liability insurance. The issue before the commission is being asked to hold a public hearing tonight and make a recommendation to the city council on the proposed amendments that we've presented, what we will present tonight. A little bit of background. We met with the county to discuss their process. Short-term rentals do require a permit license from the county, just like bed and breakfasts do. We met with Washington County Sheriff's Department just to talk about nuisance complaints, because one of the things we talked about was if we issue a license, can we revoke the license? So what would that process look like? And then we met with people, representatives from Stillwater, Maplewood, and Cottage Grove, just to talk to them about their licensing process and some of their requirements. So Washington County, they license all lodging establishments, including short-term rentals. They have an inspection process. They perform inspections every 2 years, or every year if property has a pool. They're really concerned about swimming pools. Inspection for health and safety, so they look at septic, if the property has septic and wells. Violation enforcement, they work with the property owners to get them into compliance with county requirements. They do not enforce local ordinances. So if this goes forward and is approved, they would not enforce our ordinances, we would enforce our own ordinances. We discussed whether we could move the entire permitting process, licensing, to a county level, and that just didn't seem to make sense. Washington County Sheriff, they will work on the noise complaints and we'll work with them. If there is a noise complaint that's documented, we will receive those from the county sheriff. So just looking at the three cities that we talked to, Stillwater, they license, the new licenses are approved by the city council on a consent agenda. The renewals are approved by staff. They do require a local property manager. They are capped at 50 outside of downtown. They do an inspection every 3 years by the building department. And then one of the things that they do that's unique to the cities, because we talked to somebody from Stillwater, is we mentioned this earlier during the workshop about the R1, R3 occupancy. And R3 occupancy is a single-family home. And R1 is typically like a hotel or apartment building. But according to Stillwater, they're the only city that they're aware of that requires that the short-term rentals that are not owner-occupied be R1 occupancies. So that's something that we've heard from them. They also have a 3 strikes rule for revoking a license, and they estimated that they get about 4 complaints a year, and that they've never revoked a license. Maplewood, they do not distinguish between long-term and short-term rentals. They have new licenses that are approved by staff. They do not limit the number of bedrooms. The inspections are every year, every 3 years, depending on need. Essentially, they're every 3 years unless they have a problem property. They can put that on a schedule to inspect it every year. Enforcement utilizes administrative citations to enforce the code. They estimate that they receive about 3 complaints in the past 4 years that they've had this for short-term rentals. Cottage Grove, they're the same. They don't distinguish between short-term and long-term. The new licenses are approved by council on a consent agenda, and they also require property manager. Inspections are every 2 years by code enforcement. They receive about a complaint every couple of years. They've never had to write a compliance letter except for unlicensed properties. So the proposed language that we're proposing aligns with the fire code. The short-term rental means the use of a dwelling unit or any portion thereof rented for a period of at least 1 night and less than 30 consecutive days. Each short-term rental is limited to a number of total of 5 guest rooms and 10 guests. Hotels, motels, bed and breakfast, and other land uses explicitly defined and regulated separately are not considered to be short-term rentals, typically because they have a separate process to follow. So the licensing standards that we are proposing is that they require a license to have a short-term rental separate from the bed and breakfast, and that the applicant must provide 24-hour contact information for the owner or at least one property manager if that person is different from the owner. When we say local, the term is 60 miles. So that's similar to Stillwater's too, that you have to be within 60 miles. The license is for 3 years. And this is, so when people receive the license, we would come out every 3rd year to do an inspection. And then the rental property must be inspected by the building department. So one of the things that we heard is that we didn't want corporate buyers to come in and buy up, multiple properties in Lake Elmo. So we decided that proposing a cap of 20, this gives you roughly, when the city's built out, 1 for every 1,000 people in Lake Elmo. We also, since some of the homeowners associations may have not addressed this, putting an opt-in prior to us receiving an application. So if someone lives in a neighborhood association and the board has not sent us a letter saying that they can go through the process, we would not even accept the application for a short-term rental in that neighborhood. We also talked about any specific districts you don't want them in or do want them in, and they're permitted in all residential zoning districts because we didn't hear from one or the, like if there was a specific district you wanted to exclude. Kind of the parking, to include more parking, we wrote it to where short-term rentals must provide at least 1 parking space per bedroom, but are not required to provide more than 4 parking spaces. So if you have a 5-bedroom home, it's 4 parking spaces. A 4-bedroom home, 4 parking spaces. If it's a new apartment building and they decide they want 4 licenses in an apartment building, they would have to provide however many spaces are the bedrooms. So 2-bedroom, 2 parking spaces per license. The lodging rooms cannot exceed 5, so you cannot have more than 5 bedrooms in the home. it will not be permitted. And then the licensee must ensure that the property is maintained in compliance with all city ordinances, state, federal laws. And if you see in the code, there's multiple ways where we can revoke licenses if they do not meet the standards. So the proposed language for denial, suspensions, or revocation of licenses, so it's 3 substantiated and relevant complaints or violations within a 12-month period. Property does not comply with health, building, maintenance, and other provisions of the city code or state law. Failure to pay fees, fraudulent statement, information on their application, a breach of peace upon recommendation of the sheriff. This would be if there's criminal activity at the site. Actions unauthorized or beyond the scope of the license granted. So we talked about how do you regulate people that throw parties, essentially, that invite multiple people over. So if that's what they're doing, then we could revoke the license. Proposed language, another license, if someone has a license revoked in Lake Elmo or another jurisdiction, so if we kind of know they're a problem property or owner and they're reported by another jurisdiction, we could start proceedings to revoke it here. If they don't allow us to inspect the property when needed, if they miss any conditions of the license, they don't pay their taxes, if they have, if they won't remove guests who have violated city codes or problem guests and they make no effort to do that, that's an issue. Failure to cooperate with the city on identifying individuals with a right to occupy the property. So we're trying to make sure that we have that ability too. Other good causes determined by the city council. So we're basically trying to make it really strict. So if we do have any issues with short-term rentals, we can start the process to revoke their license. That's one of the things we heard. So we wanted to essentially cap it, and if there are problems, address those problems. So we had public comment. Public comment was received through today. Below are 4 comments. We received Joyce Kelch provided comments in opposition to the ordinance and has concerns regarding housing affordability, neighborhood character, public nuisance, and safety. Joan Zertman provided comments in opposition to the ordinance, has concerns regarding staff time, housing stock, and state building code. Ann Whelan provided comments in opposition to the ordinance and has concerns regarding living standards. She also provided comments regarding trust in government. George Crocker provided a comment in support of Joyce Kelch's comments. So that's what we have tonight to present, and we're recommending approvals. This is a recommended motion, but I'll stand for any questions that you have.
Thanks for all the work you put into this.
Thank you.
You came up with a lot of scenarios there. Just quick question, Stillwater, I think you said they allow 50 outside of downtown. Do we know how many within downtown? Or?
We did this research months ago, so.
Okay.
I
I
don't
probably
recall that
was already
number.
told that too. I was just wondering if you knew.
I think there's only 1 or 2 that are available at this point.
Okay. And then do we have numbers for Maplewood or Cottage Grove, or are they unlimited?
It was really difficult because they license all rentals, so
Okay.
it's not just short-term.
Not just short-term, it's hard.
So if you had a rental license, you could do
You
either.
can do
or.
short-term, long-term, okay.
I've got a question. Was there some reason you left Woodbury out because Woodbury did not allow this type of STR?
I mean, we were talking to people that do permit it, so that was one of the things that we heard from city council is figure out a way to protect the city if we're gonna move forward, so we just talked to cities that have
So
some type-
Woodbury chose to protect their city by not allowing them, and then these are just different ones that do allow it. Thank you.
So can you maybe clarify, what's the driver of this? I mean, this has been brought up a couple times now, and I'm yet to understand, and I know we're gonna cap it at 20. So we got potentially a maximum of 20 short-term rental permits. It seems like a small amount, so what's behind the precipitous to this? Help me
So
understand.
we kept moving through the process. So what we noticed, we acknowledged was that we believe that people were receiving bed and breakfast licenses that were not owner occupying the property. So since we didn't have complaints or issues with it, the housekeeping was to allow people that didn't have owner occupied properties to move forward with a bed and breakfast license and treat them the same, since there wasn't an issue. When we brought that to the planning commission, there was concerns about that in general, in all short-term rentals. So then we brought it to the workshop to figure out if we wanted to move forward or not. And there was a 3-to-1 vote thinking like, we could move forward if there's certain rules put in place. And then, obviously, we get the planning commission, I believe it was more not in favor of short-term rentals. I don't recall the vote number. So at this point, it's just trying to move forward with a very strict short-term rental ordinance that we can get people into compliance, because that's one of the things. Like, if we don't have this, then we're going after people of compliance and not giving them a path. And since we haven't received complaints, it was how do we create one that could work for the city that is very strict. So that's kind of where we are.
Yeah.
That's why we're here today.
And just the other question I had, if I could, have we done some research in terms of the administrative efforts that would require to stand this up and then manage it every year and do the inspections and do the enforcement? It feels like that, I'm just curious if you've gone through that process.
Yeah, so that's something, I've done this in other cities and cities where we have more short-term rentals. It's written in a way to have the staff not put in as much effort in terms of having a 3-year license and a renewal and having an inspection every 3 years. We don't think we're gonna have, more than maybe 10. That's kind of what we are seeing in Airbnb. If there's more, then they would be capped at 20. We think 20 is manageable. The issue is if we have a short-term rental that's a real problem, and they didn't have a license, and they're a problem, we still have to deal with it regardless through our code enforcement. So this allows people that are in compliance to have a use that isn't a nuisance. But if we have nuisance, like a nuisance property, we'd have to bring them back through that process, revoke the license, but we do that anyway for people that are causing problems.
So it sounds like it's not really a rental or the people using it as short-term rental. The heart of the issue that causes issues is the property owners being the problem, if there is some.
So I've been here for 2 years. I haven't received a complaint about a short-term rental, even though they weren't licensed because there wasn't a process, or if they had a bed and breakfast license, we haven't received complaints. So it could be an owner. In another city I worked in, the owner was difficult, so you have to bring that owner through the process because they don't want to change certain things. Sometimes it's the people occupying the property. It could be both. Yeah.
And how are the license administered? Are they a first come, first served basis, or should there be more than 20 people trying to get a license, or, we fill up that cap? How do we decide who gets them over anyone else?
So it's a first come, first served basis. We do have a list of properties that we believe that, we have a list of properties that have bed and breakfast licenses. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna prioritize that list and send a notice of information that this has been adopted, if it is accepted and adopted by the council, and allow them to change their license if they need to change their license. We're gonna prioritize them first, and then it's gonna be a first come, first served.
Question I have, and this comes from me being in the water industry, being that a large part of the houses or the residences in Lake Elmo are on private wells. Is there anything to make sure that those wells are in compliance with MDH recommendations? Because the assumption would be made by most people, not knowing the difference between a city served, municipal served, or well served, that there are, annual or checks that need to be made.
So wells and septic go through the county and their license, and that's something when we talk to them, they are doing. So they are required to have a license from them also, and that's what they check for.
Okay, so it's a dual licensor. They'd have to have both a county license for short-term rental and the City of Lake Elmo
That's correct.
license.
Any more questions?
I guess my only other question would be about how many of the homes are in HOAs right now? We don't know the answer to that.
We don't. I mean, we know in the comp plan, there's sewered, unsewered.
Could we estimate half of them are in HOAs?
Can you pull it up, and we
I
can
think-
get back to that we can.
I think the question is, how many do we feel like there are now? Has anybody looked? And I know
Just to get
Commissioner
an
Charles has
idea.
back, and this was 3-4 months, when the last time this came up. Do we have any idea how many operating through VBRO or Airbnb are operating in Lake Elmo right now?
Yeah, I think it was like 8 total, I believe.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
there's more than that. I gave you the numbers last time, but what I'm asking is, how many HOAs do we have? Like, how many different neighborhoods have HOAs in them?
Quite a few.
Would we say half of the population lives in an HOA?
I don't know about that, but I think that of the new developments, I'll ask Sophia,
Almost
she's
all
been here
of
the
them.
longest, do you know of a new development that doesn't have an HOA?
All new developments have HOAs. Not sure the percentage, though I wouldn't want to take a guess at that.
Yeah.
I'll get to my questions, Jason. All right, thank you. Yeah, Washington County has a license requirement, but they don't do any enforcement of that license requirement.
Right.
Are you asking if they proactively try to find people that have short-term rentals and put them through a process, or?
Well, if you've got to have the license, but there's no enforcement of it, why would you have the license? If
Yeah,
I didn't, if
I'm
I
not
didn't have to,
sure-
if there's no enforcement of renewing my tabs, I'm not gonna pay that gargantuan fee and renew my tabs on my license plate.
I'm not sure if they're going and looking for people.
Okay, all right.
But it's something that they could do. I mean, I'm not sure to the extent.
And are we saying then that who's responsible for making sure the HOA has opted in? Is that an internal staff responsibility to go, here's the address, we know they're in Village Preserve HOA, we didn't get a letter from their HOA, so they're denied immediately?
That's correct. If we don't have an HOA letter, we won't accept the application. That's the easiest way for us to
Right,
process
but no,
it.
and knowing the address of the property, we will know that they're in an HOA. Can you talk a little about what the inspection includes, or to what are we inspecting and what's the standard?
Mm-hmm.
Or is that still to be determined?
We're determining a checklist, so we're working on our checklist. But
Okay.
essentially, it's a building final to make sure it meets property maintenance code, minimum housing standards, and working with fire through some issues like ingress, egress, a fire extinguisher in the building, making sure the smoke alarms, carbon monoxide. So we're working on our checklist now, but, I mean, it would be a once every 3 years.
And
type of thing.
I'm asking that question because the house that was built in 1912 is going to be grandfathered in for a lot of different things than the house that was built in 2024. And so how do we make sure we have that
And
standard?
is that checklist going to represent residential building code or more mirror the short-term rental building code that's required of hotels, bed and breakfasts, and other buildings designed for that?
The way we have it structured is that would meet the building type. So if it's a single-family type building.
Home and meets a single-family home.
Exactly.
Yep.
And then there may be some other standards that are a little bit higher, like the fire extinguisher and some other things that we're working on.
You mentioned the lodging room, maximum of 5 lodging rooms,
Bedrooms, yeah.
but not a max capacity. Have we thought about, is it been the
10.
thought of?
It's
10.
It's 10,
Yeah.
okay, all right. I
5
missed that.
bedrooms, 10
We-
occupants.
All right.
We talked about trying to figure out guests that aren't staying there in
Yeah.
case someone has a party or whatever, however that works, but it's like, it's too difficult for
Right,
us,
and
so.
nothing's ever gonna be nailed down, but that makes sense, all right. And we talked current count Lake Elmo. I know that in the grids for the different types of developments and buildings, right now, everything's a P that's permissible. Have we looked at making anything more of a conditional use?
No, we thought about that, but we wanted to treat everyone equally and not have them go through the conditional use process on something like this, which is pretty long and expensive. for
Yeah.
them. So it was to avoid that. I think what I've done in the past and what's pretty common with the zoning codes is if there's certain conditions that you want to apply, we can add that to this
Right,
if there's something specific, but
okay.
I have one more question.
And go ahead, Jane.
Go ahead, Jane.
I'm wondering, I didn't see in the grid, what other types of commercial businesses are allowed in residential areas in Lake Elmo?
so what types of, I'd have to pull the code. I don't think I have the code fully in front of me.
I know that there's,
But it's-
home-based businesses are allowed, but there seem to be a lot of restrictions on the different types of businesses that are allowed on our residents' properties.
Well, I think it's bed and breakfast. You have uses that some people would consider a business, like group homes and those types of uses.
What-
That are
what is it?
group homes that are run by businesses, like
Those are
that's,
medical facilities, though, aren't
those
they?
are sometimes allowed. Right, I mean,
Any other types of
I
commercial
don't- I would-
businesses?
I don't have it in front of me, but I know it's not uncommon to have certain types of, churches that are nonprofits
But
that
that's
are
an
allowed.
institution.
Yeah.
It's not a commercial business. Just wondering about other commercial businesses. Does anybody else know what those would be? No.
Quick question. it- Do we anticipate any issues where, what way this is written, the way I understand it, is we have a subset of residents within Lake Elmo that can opt, they got to opt in. If I happen to be in the subdivision across the street from them, we don't have that ability to opt in, right? So is there any issues with that? Because you said HOAs have to opt in order to
Right,
be
so.
part of this.
Yeah, it's possible that the HOAs weren't considering this when they were formed, depending how old they are. So we just set the standard that every single one has to opt in.
Yeah, I like the opt-in. I'm a little bit wondering, though, we have a group of, a percentage of the city that don't have that ability to opt in then. They're just in. If we thought, is there any issues
Yeah, I
we
mean, that's something
anticipate with that?
or we talked about that a little bit in the workshop. There's definitely people living in neighborhoods that don't have HOAs.
Yeah.
In some of the older neighborhoods.
And so they're already opt-in, they're in, I guess, with this, the way this is written, okay. And we don't anticipate any issues with that.
No, it was something that was discussed in the workshop.
Was it? Okay.
I mean, for the HOAs to
Okay.
have that ability.
Does anybody in the city council actually live outside of it, have HOAs? How many of them have HOAs? Almost all of them, I believe. Maybe all but one.
I'm not sure.
Any other comments for staff? Questions right now? All right, thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
With that, we will move to the public hearing portion, if I have a motion to do that.
Motion to open the public hearing?
Second that?
And with that, we will open the public hearing. Each,
Question.
you're right, thank you. God, you're good at that. I'm here for you. I appreciate it. All in favor of opening the public hearing?
Aye.
And with that, we will open the public hearing at 6:57 PM. I've got a list of people to speak up here, and I know at least two of those have submitted public comments, so we're not going to read through those. And I believe Jason did a nice job of summarizing those, but I will read your name, and I will give you, typically we give 6 minutes tops. If there's a minute left, I'm going to raise my finger so that you know you're done. Again, it's public comment. We are not here as the commission to answer questions or engage or acknowledge. We're here to listen, and that's our role. So if questions are asked, we will not be able to give you an answer. First person I have is Peter Kessler. If you can come up, please state your name, your address.
Good evening, my name is Peter Kassler. I'm at 9130 55th Street North. Had to think about that for a second. I am a family member that has been a part of Lake Elmo since 1869. We live on our farm, have been a part of the community for decades. We're proud of that. We are one of the properties that run short-term rentals using the current Lake Elmo bed and breakfast permit. So I wanted to take a minute to share that because I've heard quite a bit of opposition to it. Our experience has been nothing but positive. We have, we've been doing this for a couple of years, and we have individuals that come that are quiet, that are respectful, that don't generate more trash than would be coming from a regular rental, that don't generate more noise. They are here by and large to visit family members. We have somebody staying right now that has family members down the road. Their family doesn't have a place for them to stay for a few days. They just don't have the room, so they stay with us. That's pretty common. We don't have people coming to party. Lake Elmo, as you may know, isn't a party town. We don't have a strip of clubs and bars, so that's just not an issue. That's not why people are coming. I wanted to also just note that this is a farm, again, that's been in our family for generations. Farming doesn't pay the bills, so we've got to be a little creative in how to make this work, and that's one way we can do it. So it helps our family financially make ends meet, and it's really important for us to be creative to keep our 12 buildings on the property that always need fixing up and fixed. So, three things I wanted to say, hopefully really quickly, is one, I've heard concern about corporate ownership and absentee landlords. I think that's valid. putting a 20 number cap on there, maybe it's gonna help a little bit. I think it might be helpful to make a requirement that either the owners live on the same parcel, or maybe homestead in Lake Elmo generally, maybe not on the property itself, but that might help quite a bit. Just putting a cap doesn't help the absentee landlord issue. You could also consider making it so licensees can only have one property. That's also potential, something to look at. Two, I saw the fee structure at $1,500 for 3 years. Out of the properties that were mentioned, Stillwater, Lake Elmo, or not Lake Elmo, Stillwater, Maplewood, and Cottage Grove, by far, ours would be the highest. It's not even close. In fact, I couldn't find one that would be higher in Minnesota. I don't know, I don't think that's a reasonable fee. It's not in line with cities, and it seems a little punitive. I think that would really, the bed and breakfast permit is $100 compared to 15, so 1,500. Last, I think there's some discussion about the R1 versus R3 group home designation. I think in the discussion of what Stillwater's using, I think Stillwater is overthinking it quite a bit and made some leaps. For a living, read, and interpret statute, I can't come up with exactly how they've done that without making a leap. I think it's really fair the way it has done it to make it an R3 group designation, where you've got a single-family dwelling and it's less than 6, it's five units and less than 10 or 10 people. That is an R3, and that state fire marshal designation, that would be how they would interpret it, which to me makes a lot of sense. So, again, I would hope that we would be open to allowing residents to use their property the way they would like to, as long as they're not creating a nuisance. And that goes for any property owner. I think you kind of alluded to that a little bit, but any property owner should not be creating nuisances, whether it's traffic, whether it's noise, whether, whatever it is. So I think we should allow that. I would encourage you to look at proposed language, sending proposed language back that does require, again, either that they live on the same parcel or that they homestead a property in Lake Elmo. I think it's likely that the city council will pass this, so why not just vote this down altogether, just strengthen it instead, so it works in a way that would benefit us all. So that's me. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you very much.
Any questions for me?
Thank you.
Right, next I have Joan Zimmerman.
Hi, I'm Joan Zertman. I live at 5761 Keats Avenue. So I actually work in Stillwater. We have had the short-term home rental program since 2018, and we have continually revised it and refined it and gone through a whole lot of iterations of it. It's a very time-consuming program if it's done correctly. We have a cap of 50 in the non-downtown area, and then we probably have a dozen in the downtown area. They started with the CUP, and then once the short-term home rental program went in place, they had to get licensed. And now we regulate that based on the parking. A lot of these downtown properties cannot meet the parking requirement. And so I was just gonna kind of explain the R1 and the R3 category. That comes directly out of state building code. And Department of Labor and Industry has reconfirmed what our building official has interpreted. R1 is residential occupancy containing sleeping units where occupants are primarily transient in nature. And the R3 is where occupants are primarily permanent. So if you don't have a permanent resident there, it's considered an R3 and commercial property. So that's when all of those requirements of accessibility in the building code come into play. They have to have certified plans, it has to be, reviewed, and, the inspection part is very complicated. You know, the city could choose to do something with just primary residents, like somebody has to live on site. We are seeing a lot of the short-term home rentals. Stillwater has two-family districts, so we see a lot of, like short-term home rentals where they're in an ADU, like a detached garage, and that is still considered a primary resident on the property, so they don't have to make it accessible. The accessibility makes things very complicated, but it's required by state building code. And if you're gonna do a program like this, you have to do it the right way. You know, to, like, I don't remember if it was Maplewood or which city, they just licensed short-term and long-term the same. You can't do that. I mean, the whole thing about accessibility is for safety, for equity among people, because it is a commercial business. It is a commercial business. It's just like a hotel, it's just like a motel, and you have to make them accessible. The other thing is, I lost my train of thought. We charge a lodging tax in Stillwater, so we get 3% of all of the revenue generated by the short-term home rentals. So that's another consideration that Lake Elmo might want to do. The other thing is you might need to look a little bit closer at your zonings that you're allowing these into, because like apartment buildings, for instance, there's differences for fire-rated assemblies between a short-term rental and a full-time apartment unit. It changes, it could change your sprinkler system, it could change all kinds of things that are required by state building code and the fire code. So there's a lot of things to consider here. I would say that when we got the short-term home rental program off the ground, it took a lot of effort, and we had a part-time person that went full-time just to manage short-term home rental, and we're almost capped right now. We have 50 in the non-downtown area. We have 1 license. And the R1 and R3, we do have people that do convert their properties. Right now we've got one home that's licensed for the owner occupied. They're converting it to the non-owner occupied and making it fully accessible because they do intend to move somewhere off-site. We've got, in the last 2 years, we've probably had 4 that have been the non-owner occupied commercial short-term home rental. So it is doable if that is what people want to do. But it's very time consuming because the initial inspections for a new short-term home rental, the building official or one of the building inspectors and the fire marshal both have to sign off on that. As far as the county licensing, I'm not aware of that other than if there's a pool, probably for septic or well. I know that about 2-3 years ago, there was a number of short-term rentals in the county that had the pool and hot tubs. Well, if you have them in a short-term rental, they're considered public pools, and you have to license those, get those licensed through the county. They have to be inspected annually. They have to meet the standards of any public pool. So it's very complicated. I know the county sent out a whole bunch of cease and desists. I think our bed and breakfast ordinance is kind of messed up. I think we need to look at that in concert with the short-term home rental. Bed and breakfast, I believe it's owner occupied, they serve food, it's licensed by the county because of that food component. So I think we should look at that together with the short-term home rental. So I think there's a little bit more here. We could limit it to only owner occupied. Because otherwise, you do need to do the accessibility stuff. It is state building code, and the state has put together a whole scenario. I mean, Scott Wheeler at the state has, on more than one occasion, said, yes, the way Stillwater building official interprets that is 100% accurate. So, that's, I think, all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Jenny.
you.
Thank you.
Joyce?
Hello. Thanks for listening to me. My name is Joyce Kelch. I'm at 4855 Keats Avenue North, Lake Elmo. Hello, city planner members. I'm live on Keats, and I'm also a long-term resident, but I'm also a fourth generation. So I just want to voice my opinion that I think it just should be just opposed to this short-term rentals. We've started something that's taken a lot of time for all the members of our staff, and the future could even be spending more time trying to regulate this. I think it'll just erode the whole housing and their character of Lake Elmo. We probably will reduce our inventory of nice homes, and they'll just be into short-term rental. We'll lose our character of our nice neighborhoods, and there'll be probably some noise and other things going on, that parking issues, who knows what could happen. Maybe some safety issues, because people don't understand that children could be in certain type of neighborhoods. And we have a lot of beautiful bed and breakfast rentals here that are just wonderful. And I think Peter and Joan brought up so many details of all the things that need to happen for the short-term rentals. But I know that everything's been done with the overheads, and I just think that we should either maybe just look at this and say either 20 or 0. Because if we maintain and don't even have it, it's kind of like rust on metal. You don't see it at first, and then all of a sudden, it'll destroy you. So I think we should just keep where we are and just stay with no short-term rentals. Thank you for your time. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joyce.
And finally, I've got Doug.
I'm Doug Lovett. We live at 4370 Stillwater Boulevard, and we have a short-term rental. We did our permit last year, so I believe it's all approved. In 2020, our home was flooding, so we've been working with the watershed district on that property, but we lost virtually all of our value. And we have cows, sheep, goats, animals, so we bought another property over here, 4370 Stillwater Boulevard. And we have been using the short-term rentals to help us pay for the repairs to that property. The previous owners, the man was in a wheelchair and the woman was in a care facility, so there's a lot of fence work, barn work, things like that. It's our intent to, hopefully kind of become financially viable again and get everything fixed up and moved over, but the last 5 years now, we've been trying to make that move and that repair. So the short-term rental is a tool we've been using to try to help pay for that transition. So it's mostly just in the summer. It's when we have the opportunity to get some guests in. They usually come in and like the animals, so they're usually families, people who would like that kind of rural setting. The new property is 28 acres. We have the animals out in pasture and things, and it's an 1875 home, so it's taken, care there, but there's still a lot of work with fences and other things to do. So that's just our story. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? All right.
Got a motion?
With that, need a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the
Mr.
public
Chair,
hearing.
just a note that we received 4 written public comments.
Oh,
for
we
the
should
site.
probably read those
Well, I
first.
thought that Jason
Jason touched on them in his presentation.
Yep, just a note in addition
Summarize
to the
them, yeah.
spoken ones.
We're not going to. All right.
And do you summarize whether they're for or against this?
Yeah, that was
Item?
in the presentation.
You can go back to it.
I believe all four were in opposition.
And two of them spoke here tonight.
Correct. I don't think they were included
They
in the
weren't
original
included in our
packet.
packet.
No,
Yeah.
we just got them a few hours before this meeting, so I'm sure
Right.
Jason got it. I
Yep.
appreciated that, Dave. We're in there. What, touch on them again, I assume? There you go.
Yep.
Joyce was in opposition, Joan was in opposition, Ann was in opposition, and George supported Joyce's
Comments.
comments. With that, motion to close the public hearing?
Second?
All in favor? Closing the
Aye.
public hearing?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, and we will close the public hearing at 7:16. Thank you. All right, discussion amongst the commission.
A motion first.
Need a motion to discuss, wow.
I'll move to recommend the approval of the
You're
proposed
right,
text
you gotta
amendment
talk about
as
that.
presented by staff for short-term rentals.
Second.
We have a second? Now, comments, concerns, discussion?
I'm full of them. You want me to go first or last?
I'll go first, it's my motion. I think the stigma of short-term rentals is that they're party places, right? My family and I travel out to the East Coast in Massachusetts with extended family, and we stay in a large short-term rental, and it gives us a place to all be together in one area as opposed to a hotel and going out to eat or stuff like that. I like to think that we don't cause any problems. We park 3 cars when we go there, but I think they have their value. And I think staff's done a really good job of laying out guidelines. I like the limit of 20. I like the fact that an HOA has to opt in. I think it's fantastic that MDH, the Department of Health, Fire Marshal, Building Official are all gonna inspect the property. And in fact, these properties will probably be safer than many of the homes in Lake Elmo by the time they're said and done. I don't like to tell property owners what they can and cannot do with their properties. I also don't like it when some people's property affects their neighbor's property. I think that staff has put a lot of checks and balances in place here to make it easy to revoke the license. Right now, we don't really have any regulations to revoke a license. We have, owner-occupied bed and breakfasts, but we also know that there's some Airbnbs and Verbos that are happening that aren't licensed. So, in my opinion, that's why I am for this text amendment and why I think staff's done a good job of putting it in place.
Would you like to speak?
I just have one.
Go
easy
ahead,
question.
because I can go on.
Excuse me. I've cold. If one owner has multiple licenses in our city and they get one revoked, do they get them all revoked?
They can, that's part of the code.
Okay. If we have an owner that also has property in Cottage Grove or Maplewood and they get it revoked there, could we potentially revoke it here?
It's written that way in the code to give us the flexibility to do that.
Thank you.
How, just following up with that, how would we be notified if they lost their license?
They would have to notify us. I mean, it would be very difficult for us to
Right.
know that. But if that becomes an issue, sometimes people will report that to us. We could act on it, I would assume, though, they would also have problems here typically, but it just does give us that flexibility.
I have just kind of 2 comments. One is I have used, Verbos, Airbnbs, and they do present a great alternative, as well as understanding folks that do run them as alternate income streams, and that's a lifesaver. But the The concern seems to be not necessarily the party houses, it's the corporate ownership, someone coming in and effectively buying a home to turn into a business, and then the impact of those directly around it, that you purchase a home or live in a home and all of a sudden your neighborhood is zoned something other than what it appears to be. So having like the HOAs being to act as a buffer, you'll all probably figure out my opinions on HOAs pretty quick, but having the HOAs being the only way to stop it, to protect neighbors, I think is unfair to those that don't have HOAs. So definitely trying to make sure that we don't get the not in my backyard attitude, so that people can do with their property as they would like. But whether it be a buffer zone or a, adjoining property approval consent as part of the permit. If you do go into an apartment and literally shared common walls is very intrusive. If it's a farm, honestly, that's really hard to make a bad neighbor when you're on a farm, just due to separation, so that, yes, it's a small amount, and, the license of 3 years, it's easily revocable, but are there some additional checks that can be put in for more higher density areas?
I think the HOA is a double-edged sword, right? Not having an HOA has a lot of benefits, and then there are some benefits with an HOA as well. But I think that can be noted, and staff can take that. If there are hard and fast items that would change the motion as it's presented, then it's, when we do vote on the motion, then if it's denied, then that's part of the next step. We can file a new motion with that amendment, with those changes.
Before,
Yeah, go ahead.
only
You
'cause
guys are
said you
covering
have
it
a
all
list.
for me, so it's good.
I have concerns with it. While I agree there are success stories, and there are other communities that have non-success stories, right? I think I use Airbnb in Verbo, but I don't think, when I'm using it, it's not in a residential type community. It's usually in a touristy area, but neither here nor there. I think we have to be careful looking at individual situations like that. I think 20 doesn't move any needle. I don't want more, but I'm saying, I don't know what we're accomplishing by circling a number 20, and we're helping 20 individuals, which is good.
You're also
But at
putting a
what
set of
cost?
rules in place.
Yeah, but there's a cost benefit, right? So does the benefit outweigh the costs of, no, I don't mean the physical costs, I mean the community costs. And that's the question we have to come, is those 20 licenses outweigh maybe the community cost to that? And maybe some people will say there is no cost. The other two things really quickly. So the outside of the HOA, neighborhoods don't have any say on if somebody, just call it what it is, it's a transient type of a situation, moves in next door, right? We don't give any outlet, or even as a community like we do HOAs. And then I'm a little concerned with the no conditional, we can, if this is, everything is open, there are probably corridors that make more sense. So those are just my inputs. I know it's a big list, but I think there's some unknown things that make it hard for me to support at this point.
Very good. Thank you, Mike.
I have to say thank you for all the work that you've done on this, because it is a complicated topic, and I know
Yes.
a lot of cities in the Twin Cities are struggling with it. Woodbury has opted not to have them. Hugo has opted not to have them. A lot of cities are reversing course, and they're deciding not to have them. I do want to say I want to support our citizens, so those of the citizens that have the bed and breakfast in their properties, I support that. That's a completely separate topic than what we're talking about here tonight, though. And so I guess what I feel like the city is asking the residents to do is to tolerate commercial use of single-family homes in their neighborhoods, and then also be responsible for providing the, reporting the violations and policing them. And I just don't think that's fair. You go into the HOA, same thing. HOAs can opt out, so let's just say that's half of the people that live here. They're covered. They don't have to have a problem. It's the rest of the community that isn't in an HOA that's going to be stuck with these short-term rentals next to them. And there's nothing that they can do other than after the fact, try to fight them. I can tell you that I read in depth about the city of Marine on St. Croix and the lawsuit that they went through with John P. Norris. He was the plaintiff. He had a short-term rental. He was a non-owner occupied. And the city was in a major lawsuit with him. Cost the city a lot of money to get rid of it. It wasn't permitted, and he did it anyway, but they spent a lot of money to fight that lawsuit. And it also involved neighbors that had to hire attorneys to fight a lawsuit. And I just don't think that that's fair to set the citizens up for that type of a situation. We already have we already have bed and breakfasts in town. Those are our citizens that are running those businesses, and I want to support them. I don't think we should be bringing in short-term rentals as competition to our citizens. The other part of, you're a long-term resident and you're in a neighborhood, you have a community there, you know who your neighbors are, you feel safe, you know what to expect, and the next thing you know, the city has allowed a revolving door transient facility next to their home. And that, it's just not, I don't think it's fair. And so, those are my main comments. And the short-term rentals are one of the fastest-growing segments of real estate right now. We have state government and federal government right now that are trying to clamp down on limiting those. So I don't know why we're trying to move forward with them when everybody else is trying to repeal them. And then to compare us with Maplewood, it's in Ramsey County. It's a huge community. It's 4 times the size of us. Cottage Grove is 4 times the size of us. Woodbury is much larger as well, but that's a growing community, and if they're not allowing it, why do we want them? So I guess that those are my high points. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
I've got a few.
Go ahead.
All right. Susan Dunn and I also have lived here for quite a few years, and just like the rest of you, I've used B&Bs before, like going to like a wedding or graduation, something like that. And, they have a good place in our world, I believe. But I prefer to prevent problems for our existing residents. I always have for probably 40, 50 years. And I try to look at the total picture. I live in an area that does not have an HOA. So anything could go beside me. Anything could probably go behind anybody else that's out here, except for those that are in HOAs. Enforcement and staff time would be expensive and extensive. I wasn't aware of the lawsuit up in Marine. I'll have to go in and look at that
It's
up
right on
too.
their page.
Yep, there we go. And they brought up about all these different building codes. There's more expense, safety, changes of character of the neighborhood. You get to know your neighbors, and then 2 weeks later, you get somebody else that's there for 3 days or 4 days or something, and they're in and out. You don't feel safe as a single person or a family. So you have to start to think about safety to the residents that are here. I don't want with a nuisance, traffic, noise, but there are others like myself and some of you, I'm sure, when you're out, at a B&B or something, you're respectful for it because you're in a home. It's a beautiful area. So I am against the short-term rental. I don't think that it's appropriate, and I think we should think about the other communities are more like us, and it's okay to say no. Thank you.
All right.
Does anyone know what the Washington County fee is for their short-term rental permit?
Their licensing requirement,
Yeah, their licensing requirement that there's,
no enforcement of.
it's also known as a cash grab.
Right, yeah.
300 per year.
Yeah,
Okay.
And so that was, the concern brought up is like, if we are comparing us to others, yes, there's always risks, and if it becomes problematic and truly disruptive to communities, this is something that can always be revoked, but it's the $1,500 for 3 years plus $300 a year. That pushes out the person looking for occasional use as a supplemental income up front. So that's another concern I have.
I think it
as written.
be trying to find the balance of having a commitment to the skin in the game and losing that $1,500 should you not follow through, should you not adhere to the rules.
Can I add something to this too? We
Please.
did not add an occupancy tax or go down that path, which would bring in more revenue.
Right,
But we did not recommend that, so we wouldn't have to go back and try to track that.
right.
So we're looking
I
for
think-
more revenue.
My perspective is on this, and always has been, is there's an aspect to protect private property rights, and you've got to do, you own that property, you've got to have some flexibility what you want to do. I do live in an HOA, and I'm on the board of my HOA because I don't like HOAs. But I've often said, if my neighbor wants to paint their house purple, paint it purple. It's your property. Deal with that. I know that behind me, I don't own that land. I can't control what's going to go there. But I do look to the city to make sure that the zoning is appropriate. And that would be my level of protection. I think there's value that it's a tool for homeowners that are looking to generate revenue. I think of sunbirds who may be, wanting to rent out the house in the winter so they can have some revenue, so they can be in Florida or Arizona, because, who wants to stay here?
It's still
Not
their
everybody
primary residence,
over
though.
February. Well, I may flip. You flip it one day, you stay one extra day, and now your taxes in Florida are a whole lot cheaper than they are here. From that sense of, in a lot of ways, but it's 6 months in a day. That's all you gotta do is change it. But have that flexibility, one way or another. It still may be your primary residence, but you're not owner occupied. So you're still in a VBRO situation. I understand the cons. I don't see that this is a Stillwater situation. It's not a party situation, or maybe at 8. Has anybody been impacted? I haven't heard anybody who's been impacted by the 8 that exist out there right now.
There's more than 8. And
More than
half
8?
of- And half of the ones
My-
that are
my-
out there
but
are
that-
not
let me-
permitted.
I'm talking, thank you. If even it's more than 8 and they're not permitted, has anybody had any complaints over it at all
Apparently.
in the time? I would say if we don't provide a venue to do this, are people going to do it anyway? And then what's the enforcement process of that? Is that the neighbors still calling and complaining? Because I don't think the city staff is going to go out and look at Airbnb and VBR all the time to try to go, oh, hey, that's there, we got to go drain that down. We haven't done it yet. It's not going to happen in the future. But if you provide that venue, now you've got a set of rules, you got a set of obligations, you've given the responsibility to the city and the sheriff and everybody else to say that this has been addressed, they've signed up for it, and they're licensed. If we don't do anything, they're still going to exist, and there's going to be zero enforcement. So I applaud staff for going through and putting this together. With what I just said, that's why I'm in favor of this. I think that the framework is there to do it right. I don't like extensive frameworks. I think Stillwater has gone down the path of way too much regulation. I don't think we want to be there. Keep it simple, keep it easy. And when people cross the line, you take away their license and they're done. And that's my perspective, but it's been great to hear it from both sides tonight. I don't think we expected to hear that. So I appreciate, everybody who came in, Peter and Doug, here's a positive side of the way this has gone. Here's homeowners, property owners that haven't received complaints from anybody, despite the fear that seems to be out there. And yeah, and Joan and Joyce, those are they're all legitimate concerns. And again, I will say, we're going to take a vote on this motion. We may change the motion if we need to do that. And I want to remind everybody, we're here to listen to you. We're here to listen for the city. And all we do is give a recommendation to council based on our experiences and the information that we receive. So, and council at the final point, and Sophia, when would this go before council?
It is not scheduled for city council at this time.
Not scheduled this time. So I think it's better to have something than nothing, because nothing leaves us back where we are, and they're unregulated, and they're going to happen then they are going to happen. And what can you do? you're gonna call and it's gonna be harder to get something enforced other than a noise ordinance, then we know that it's a rental property, here we go, we're gonna deal with it. That's all I have.
I have one more comment.
Yes.
We do have something on the books that helps us regulate these, and they're called bed and breakfasts. And they are allowed, and they're owner occupied. And we have probably 18 of them in our city.
Is there, staff, is there currently a ordinance against short-term rentals in the city of Lake Elmo?
The code is silent on short-term rentals.
Thank you. All right. And with that, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of the motion as proposed, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
The way I count that is 4 in favor and 3 against. The motion passes. Thank you. With that, I'd like to take a 5-minute recess. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I know it's a passionate subject.
It is.
So it's now,
It is a passionate subject.
just a moment,
7:36.
it's now 7:37. We will return at 7:45. Take a short recess. Thank you.
and members of the commission. So this is a project that I think everyone probably recognizes to some degree. It's been at some point in the development review process for what seems like ever, but really for the last couple of years. So right now, we are looking at a preliminary plat proposed, a rezoning, and several variances that have been requested by Rachel Development. So I'll walk through the staff report and review, and then I know that the developer does have some additional information to provide you from their perspective. So, all right, the overview of the site, again, if you're unfamiliar with the location, it's an undeveloped, roughly 80 acres on Inwood Avenue, right next to the Park Reserve. This project had a preliminary plat and OP PUD approved in September of 2024. That project would have included the existing homestead being preserved, along with 65 new residential units. That project would have used a communal septic system to serve all of the different homes for wastewater. After performing additional due diligence, kind of above and beyond what's required, the developer identified that the community septic system wouldn't work. Certainly not for lack of trying. The soils on the site were an issue. And so they had to kind of go back to the drawing board. That led to a comprehensive plan amendment request that came in front of the Planning Commission last year. The idea there was to basically use that OP PUD design, but bring sewer in to serve the property instead of a community septic system. That project also unfortunately did not move forward in this case because the Met Council notified staff that there was an issue with sewer capacity in the line that was being remedied through a construction project, so there was no imminent capacity available. And so again, the developer has kind of gone back to the drawing board to identify what would work. In this case, is now looking at utilizing individual septic systems for an 18-lot subdivision. So that's where kind of the background of how we got here, and I think you'll remember some of those different reviews along the way. So, just as an overview of this particular application, as a refresher, the current zoning on this property is still rural residential. That was going to change through the PUD that was approved, but because the final plat never made it across the finish line, we still have that rural residential zoning in place. The proposed zoning in this case is to change from rural residential to residential estate. The comprehensive plans guidance is proposed not to change. That would remain as rural single family. So just to summarize here, the 18-unit single family detached development would be at approximately 0.23 units per gross acre. Just as a refresher, again, just looking at the map here, want to highlight the two developments north and south of this project. Lake Elmo Heights is the project or the development to the north, and Torrey Pines is to the south. So, hope you get your bearings. This is the development plan that was submitted with the preliminary plat request. You'll see those 18 lots, really there's 17, and that existing farmstead would remain its own lot. So just a few characteristics of this project to kind of call to your attention before I go further into the review. We have the connecting street from Inwood to Imperial that the city required in the prior plan, along with water main running in that new street to create a looped connection that was really important for the city so that these lots are still served by city water. Another thing that you're seeing is, if you look really closely at the screen, you can't see all of them, but there are 5 wetlands being preserved on this site with a few storm ponds as well that are proposed to manage stormwater. So that's kind of the high level. And we'll talk about a lot of the finer details as I get into the development or the plan review. Just as an overview for you of the land use, here is just illustrating via maps what we talked about. So the zoning currently is rural residential, will change to residential estate as proposed, and then the future land use map will remain the same. Just as a note, the residential estate zoning designation is the same, or the proposed designation would be the same now if approved as Torrey Pines and Lake Elmo Heights, so there would be some consistency on that corridor. To summarize the variances for you, there are 3 that were called out. And the first one is a front yard setback specifically for the existing farmstead. So when the developer plats the right-of-way that's required along the Inwood corridor, the county has a certain corridor width that it needs through plats that get recorded. So essentially, what that will do is it will take up some of the existing farmstead such that the existing home structure no longer complies with the setback requirement that the city has. So a front yard setback is requested for that. There was a request to reduce the landscaping requirements. And lastly, a request for not providing a sidewalk. So there are a number of elements that staff have reviewed through the preliminary plat review process. You can see them on the screen, but I'll walk through a number of them here. So I just want to start with the bulk standards that the city has. So here's a table that was included in the staff report. I'll call out just a few things here. This really just assesses, again, those proposed lots, how they meet or don't meet the city standards. In this case, pretty much everything meets except for that front yard setback variance that I called out. So the minimum area for lots is 2.5 acres. In this case, you're seeing a proposed, the smallest of all of these lots is at 2.56, with the largest at just over 5 acres. So your average is somewhere in the neighborhood of about 3.5 acres. The max impervious cover per lot is not anticipated to be a problem. The buildable area per lot needs to be at least 1.25 acres. That's outside of any wetlands or associated wetland buffers or septic areas. So like the buildable area has to be a certain size, and all of the lots meet that requirement. The residential estate category or zoning district has a pretty unique requirement for lot shape. So you have to have a lot meet two different standards. The lot would have to allow for a circle that's at least 250 feet in diameter to exist somewhere within the lot, which is going to create a certain, minimum shape, if you will. There is also a minimum requirement for, or a maximum, I should say, for a ratio of lot length to lot width. So all of these lots appear to meet those relatively unique standards. The city has a number of different setbacks that I've called out here. And I think that's the kind of the high notes there. So on the screen is the tree preservation plan. There really aren't many trees that qualify as a significant tree that would warrant the mandatory replacement from the city. So there are a handful of trees though that would meet that classification and are being removed. None of the trees, I should restate that and say, of those trees that are removed, they're not coming to the threshold of requiring mandatory replacement. There's a certain minimum of removal that's allowed without any replacement. So this development is not required to replace any trees. If we look at the northwest corner, the landscape architect's memo did call out a really large, what appeared to be a very large, I think it's a black cherry tree. The diameter was pretty significant. And so we looked at that and the associated root protection area, the critical root zone. There's a stormwater pipe going through there. So we asked the developer to get back out there and kind of reevaluate that tree and what could be done. It turns out that that's not necessarily a 40-plus inch diameter tree. There's actually numerous sprouts that are kind of coming out of the ground at a low point. So it doesn't quite meet that state record threshold of 40-plus inches, but that also means the critical root zone will be significantly smaller, so we're not as worried about the preservation of that tree. But rest assured, we looked into it, so. And then I'll overlay here, this is the landscaping plan, so you're seeing 119 different trees that are proposed along the connecting street and the cul-de-sac, and then in addition to that, another 3 trees per lot. And so that's what's spelled out right on the plan page there. This essentially falls short by roughly 2 trees per lot, so the landscaping plan is currently deficient of 45 trees. Other review considerations here, so I mentioned wetlands. There are 6 wetlands total on the property. 5 of those are being preserved. They would be protected by easements long-term. And that 6th wetland is being proposed for what's called de minimis removal. It's very small. It's just under 800 square feet, so not requiring protection by watershed requirements. And I would mention to you that wetlands are, again, protected by easements long-term, buffer signage is required. In terms of traffic, access, and parking, the required road connection is being made with one conforming cul-de-sac. The city council has talked through what type of a road is allowed in this situation, and so they've been working through allowing a rural versus an urban section road. Ultimately, the council provided flexibility or indicated that they would be willing to provide flexibility to not require a full urban section because this is a more rural development, but there would be some minimum standards that the road would have to meet. Typical urban projects also require a sidewalk on at least one side of the road. Because this project would be connecting to the Inwood corridor where there are no sidewalks, from the Inwood to the Imperial corridor where there are also no sidewalks, and also the fact that it's rural, so relatively low traffic volume, it does make sense to provide some flexibility to the sidewalk requirement. Washington County is requiring a turn lane on Inwood, so that would be a requirement for this approval. And there appears to be plenty of parking area on those individual lots. Just a quick note on stormwater. This is topographically speaking, a pretty challenging project with the stormwater management side of things, but it is being managed by 3 different storm ponds and 2 different basins, all on public outlots. Park dedication. In this case, staff did bring this project to the Parks Commission. They recommended a cash in lieu of land dedication. There are no notable trail connections in this area within the city of Lake Elmo, and so the park reserve is also immediately adjacent. So cash in lieu seems to be the best path forward here. Other review comments. This was circulated internally into our partner agencies. The city's fire chief provided a comment memo. City's landscape architect and city engineer also provided comment memos. We also understand that the developer is in coordination with Valley Branch Watershed District and is well on their way if they haven't already received the permit. So I provided a bunch of findings as recommendations in the staff report. I'm just gonna quickly kind of blow through these slides, but I can always come back if you do have questions. So we provided findings for approval of the rezoning from rural residential to residential estate. Essentially, it has to be compliant with the comp plan. Findings for the variances, so the farmstead front yard setback, findings can be made in support of approval there. The total landscaping per disturbed acre, that's the number of trees. I mentioned the deficit of 45 trees on this property. Staff actually don't find that this would meet a practical difficulty test and are therefore recommending denial of that particular variance. So that would mean the developer would have to come forward in the future with the plan meeting that minimum landscaping requirement. Lastly, sidewalk requirement. This is actually a variance from your subdivision ordinance, so there are slightly different findings for that. They're in the staff report. Staff are comfortable with approval of that flexibility. And lastly, the preliminary plat, generally complying with the comp plan, subdivision, zoning ordinance, and design standards. So all told, if the city approves this project, staff are recommending at least 14 conditions for approval that are shown in the staff report. Most of these are very standard conditions. A couple of unique ones that I'd call out. Potentially, if providing flexibility on landscaping, potentially some other type of mitigation for trees not planted, and then wetland buffer signage being required around those wetlands. As you all know, a public hearing was noticed for the meeting this evening, so You will have that opportunity to hear from residents. And the staff recommendation would be twofold then. One motion to approve the rezoning preliminary plat and 2 of the variances, and another motion to deny the landscaping variance. That's what staff are recommending. So with that, if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to take those. I'll remind you that Paul, the developer with Rachel Development, is here this evening as well and has some more slides for you. So.
Questions for staff?
Yeah, how wide is the street proposed?
I can tell you what the right-of-way width is. I believe that's 70 feet, so the street would be within that corridor, I think 28 feet, curb to curb.
And again, why couldn't that black cherry tree be saved? That is one of the historical ones. It's quite large. I went and saw
So,
it.
I think staff
So
are pretty
it's
comfortable at this
something-
point that it can be saved.
I need it, yeah, it needs to be, and one of your requirements is that to try to be saved, please.
Sure.
Or be saved.
The one thing absent on the landscaping plan is how much turf is gonna be installed around these houses? So something that would be a turf grass that we'd expect to be irrigated.
I am going to let the developer answer that for you. And if there are other questions for me, I'm happy to take those, or you can also write them down and I'll happily answer them after the developer presents. All right.
This is very compatible with the other RE estates that are on each side of them, so it's nice it just came back to us in a better state than it was before. Thank you.
I didn't see in their packet, is there gonna be an HOA involved in construction?
I'm gonna let him answer that too.
They'll be saved.
Better get one.
Better get one, so you can save yourself.
All right, with that, Chair and Commission, I'm just gonna hand it over to the developer here, and if you have questions for
Fantastic.
me, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thanks, Nathan.
Here we are again.
Yes.
Chairman, Commissioners, Paul Robinson, Rachel Development. I was kind of thinking of this, if this is like an always a bridesmaid, never the bride kind of thing, wondering if maybe tonight we'll get married. That would be really super nice.
Oh, we've had proposals that have gone on longer, so don't feel special yet.
Okay. So, tonight I'm going to show you the plans we have in your packet, but we've already started working on responding to cities, to the staff comments. And so there will be some slides that answer questions because they were in the staff comments and we've already responded to them. So you'll see a little bit of a hybrid when I get going through the plans here. So again, just the same basics, 18 lots between 2.5 acres and 5 acres in size. So these are obviously large lots. We're doing the rural road with the ribbon curb. Nathan gave a great background on that. We went through the council, and the council supported that for this project. And I'm going to call this a modern stormwater treatment system with 5 different treatment basins, because if you look at any other residential estate, you're not going to see as many ponds, because this is keeping up with today's standards for stormwater treatment, and we've worked really tight and closely with Valley Branch Watershed District, which is why we didn't have the plans actually sooner to the city with our responses, because we were just answering their questions right up to probably Friday, and we got it all. I think we were set with Valley Branch now. Full turn lanes on Inwood, which is no cheap date. That's like $400,000 turn lanes. So for our 18 lots, we're putting on full turn lanes that just got built for both developments north and south of us by the county, which we were a little bit late to the game on, unfortunately. So as was mentioned, this is really the same now as each of the developments to the north and the south. So there's Lake Elmo Heights, we have Torrey Pines to the south, and if you put in Highpointe Crossing, it all kind of looks like it marries together. And it's basically what you've been asking me to do, up until, now. If you look at the density of just that 80-acre parcel portion, we have 18 lots within the 80 acres, and the same 80 to the north would be 23 and 24 to the south. So if you look at it, it's actually less density than the 2 neighboring developments. Our intention was to come in and meet all of the requirements, and I'm going to talk to you at the end about maybe not meeting the front yard setback, and I'll talk about that at the very end. But
up until this moment, until we get there, I'm meeting all the requirements, everything, the 100-foot front, the 100-foot rear, the 50-foot side yard. There's a couple home lots with wetlands on them. They still have the required 1.25 acres of upland. Actually, the smallest is 1.8 acres. They all have the 2.5 acre minimum, and they exceed the 3.3 acre average with 3.5 acres, because that's it also, those are all code requirements. So the yellow area that you see there is the buildable area on the lot. The radiuses that Nathan was talking about, you can see how they all fit into each lot. That's one of the requirements. It is not an easy requirement to meet. And then that 3-to-1 is the other thing that Nathan was mentioning, where you take the width of the lot and the length can't be 3 times that. And so the length on that particular lot is 791. That lot actually got shorter yet. You'll see that in a minute. Sorry. So I'm calling these flexibilities. I know that staff wants to call them variances, which technically they are, but they seem just sort of like flexibilities to me. And so the one is just the exception for that, for the existing homestead on Inwood. The sidewalks, really, most of the sidewalk standards today are for what's happening in Lake Elmo, which is urban. You know, you have a lot of urban developments, and it makes sense to have sidewalks in urban developments. But if you look at all of the residential estate developments, none of them, a couple do, but most of them don't have any sidewalk. And if you just look at Lake Elmo Heights to the north, you know, of course, no sidewalk. Torrey Pines or Lake Elmo Heights to the north, Torrey Pines to the south, no sidewalk. And which fits the residential estate, 18 lots where the people are gonna walk in the street. And then the other flexibility that I was asking for is just fixing the number of trees that have to be planted on the lot at 3. If you look at what we're planting just to meet the rules, and the reason I'm doing that, and the reason I've kind of mentioned that is that typically in the urban areas of the city, you're getting 3 homes per acre. And so if you require 5 trees for an acre of disturbance, you're really getting 1.65 trees per lot. But when you go out into this big farm field in these big areas and you ask for 5 trees per acre, it's really not a comparable. And what we're planting is, for the street trees, is 119 street trees. And one of the comments in the staff report is that 25% had to be conifers. So we're using those conifers as screening. So there's more screening here than what's in your packet along Inwood and along the properties to the west. And then if you take the 3 trees per lot, you add another 54 trees. And so in total, we're planting 173 trees for 18 lots, or almost 10 trees per lot. And I would submit to you, and this isn't like a fall on your sword kind of request, but you'd think 10 trees would be enough. Like at some point, when have you satisfied enough trees and it seems just a little bit more like a government overreach at some point to keep asking for more trees. Again, I told you we resubmitted plans that responded to all the city comments. One of the comments was, how are we gonna phase the development? We're gonna be doing it all in one phase. So there isn't gonna be any need to kind of figure out sort of a not phased approach. It's gonna be all developed at one time. Stormwater, there were a number of changes that were made, you know, several dozen very small changes that you wouldn't notice, but there was one large change, which I'll show you in a minute. And then there was a lot of comments early on about our septic sites, and we have satisfied all those comments, and all the septic systems meet the requirements. So here's the one about the pond. So we're talking about the city wanted a different access for ponds 2 and 3. One they felt was more reliable, and they wanted to make sure that we had county approval for it. So in the plan that you have, we had these 2 accesses for the ponds 2 and 3. And what we did is we reconfigured the lots to be able to combine the access to ponds 2 and 3. And then with that reconfigured access, there's only 1 access onto the county road. And so it's really the same plan. Those were very, very long, deep lots, and now they're just less long and deep, but they're still, you know, bigger than 2.5 acres. This is just something coming down the pipe. I'm trying to find a place to put a monument to try to create a sense of entry, but I'm just running out of space because you know, the low point of the property is where we're entering the property, and so there's ponding on both sides. I've got drainage utility easements, I got right away. I really have no space or public space to put it, and so I'm gonna possibly be asking for just some kind of permission to put something in that public space.
Need a monument sign, so the HOA has to maintain it.
Second. So, the other thing that I foreshadowed was that we staked all the lots out in the field, last week, and, walked out there with Charles Cut Company, and we spent 3 hours, you know, really analyzing every lot and where the homes were. And, in a number of cases, and I'll go through different examples, but the 100-foot front yard setback, which is, to me, fairly arbitrary, pushes the lots into different places where they, you know, it wouldn't be the optimal place for the house. And I'll explain so I'm looking for 50, and if you see that, it's probably kind of subtle. So right now it's at 100. What I'm looking for is to shrink it down to 50, if you can see that happen on your screen. That's still 70 feet from the road. So like from the roadway to the front of the house or to the garage is 70 feet. It doesn't change any lots, no layout, there's no changes to the whole. It just takes the homes further away from the adjacent homes, so it actually kind of gets the houses where most people don't recreate in their front yards, they're in their backyards. And so it makes the backyard areas bigger. It provides some additional flexibility for people who will want a pool or to work around some septic sites, and again, preserves more backyard area. It also provides for, like I said right off the bat, optimal siting of the homes on the lots. And then it works better with the existing topography, because if you remember, and I didn't go through this, but last time I showed you the topography of the site, and there's kind of a ravine, and we're kind of putting the road on the top of it. Well, on the south side, it pushes some of those homes right up to the edge of that ravine, where if they're 50-foot back, they'd have at least that 50-foot backyard. And I just gave you an example of just what it would be like, 100-foot setback with pools, and then 100-foot setback with, 50-foot with pools. And again, not everybody's gonna have a pool, but if you look at like Whistling Valley as an example, which I think is gonna be the same caliber house and the same kind of neighborhood if you drive through there, and you can see that those homes, there's a number of pools in there. These are, I'll show you in a second, but these are 1-acre lots. We're having 2 to 5 acre lots, right? These are 20-foot side yard setbacks. So there's 40 feet between homes. We're gonna have 100 feet between homes. They're 150 foot wide. We're on average 250 foot wide on our lots. And and so what I'm looking for is that, and in a lot of cases, the front setback, which was minimum, was 50, is what they have here. But what I'm gonna tell you is that the 50 will feel a lot more expansive in our neighborhood. I mean, there'll still be a lot of space around these homes, but it just accomplishes a lot of other things, and I think makes for a better neighborhood. I'm just gonna give one lot example here. So if I just take the 100-foot setback, so you can kind of see what that looks like, or the 50-foot, and again, it just kind of gives you more space, more opportunity to do things in the rear. There's 120 feet or 70 from the road. There'd be 160 to the rear lot line or 240 to the rear lot line. And so I think that's what I have for tonight. My shortest presentation yet, actually. I can address the cherry tree though, if you want. It never was being taken down, but it was just because we were impacting the more than 50% of the canopy, we had to count it as being taken down. But it is a multi-stem, so they're not, their stems are between 10 and 18 inches. So as a tree, it's just a multi-stem tree. They're individual trees, they're just clustered together. So it's far from the state's biggest tree. It's not even close. Is there another?
Curious on that price point for these homes. Are they, I know your original plan was like 1.2 for the
No,
detached.
I mean, I might be a lemming going over a cliff with this. I don't know. I hope not, with my herd. It's, they're gonna be pushing 2.5 to 3.5.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And you'll be working more with the topography of the and this is Mr. Eberhardt's property, so I'm kind of aware of the property.
Yep.
But there is some undulation and some different valleys and hills there and so on. So by bringing the down to the 50-foot, 50 to 70-foot, that would be working better with the topography of the land itself?
The closer it gets to the road, it will help, yeah. I mean, because we're gonna have to manipulate the grade somewhat for the road, but it's much less manipulation on this plan than it was on the 65 lot.
Is it possible to look at stormwater use for irrigation? Or because of the way we're laid out, it's just not
It's-
economically feasible?
We'd looked at it,
Yeah.
it's near impossible.
Right.
I mean, there's always an engineering way to do everything.
You
but,
want to spend enough money, you get anything done, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yep,
I used to work for General Electric where we said the impossible was a lack of funding.
right.
So how much are you estimating each lot would have for irrigated? Just because, I mean, there's already some pretty stout irrigation restrictions in the community. And my guess is these houses will all come with irrigation systems. And that's a lot of water usage if there's not going to be any stormwater recovery.
Right. I mean, it's not something that we're regulating. I mean, this is gonna be much like Torrey Pines and Lake Elmo Heights, where individuals will decide, I think, there's a lot of yards out there that don't need irrigation once the grass gets established. We're not gonna require sod, we'll allow people to seed lawns. And I've done that in a number of developments, so that does give grass a fighting chance if they haven't started, from an addiction to water. But again, this is really very much kind of in the art and the style of what's been in Lake Elmo as far as big country lots. And so people are gonna have, decide for themselves. And there will be a homeowner association, but I'm gonna say it's an HOA light, basically to do more of, the architectural control and to, maybe the entrance
Mailboxes.
and the
yeah.
mailbox. Which is required now everywhere, right? I mean, the
Uh-huh.
post office requires CBUs for everything.
Because that's one of the HOA restrictions is sticking to established turf grass and not allowing any low water use alternatives such as native plantings.
If somebody wanted to use, like a fescue grass that's a no-mow kind of fescue, that's not gonna be disallowed.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, we're probably gonna be putting that on as a ground cover.
There are some HOAs that disallow it.
Right. That is not our intent, to disallow.
In the city of Lake Elmo, they're actually working with the University of Minnesota on the low water use grasses. And a lot of people are doing more of the prairie or more of the natural things too. So there are options out there.
I'm not sure I see anything from the landscape architect, but is there a certain portion of these properties that are gonna be like the yard and the rest of it is just gonna be natural, or is it just whatever they wanna do?
It's whatever they wanna do. That was my last plan. That was mandated, more than 50% of the space was in a conservation easement.
All right, any other questions for Paul? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
So here we go.
we need to open the public hearing first.
Motion to open the public hearing?
Second?
And with that,
Call the question.
oh, thank you, I never do. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, and with that, we'll open the public hearing at 8:20. Is there anyone who'd like to speak? You're more than welcome to. Ideally, fill out a form in the back, but if you just want to come up and give your name and your address. We don't believe we received any public comment over email. Come up, name and address.
My name is Ann Cohen. We live at 8276 22nd Street North. And it's just fascinating to see this evolve over time.
Sure.
I have to congratulate you really on all the work that you've done. I know from the very first meeting, I met them when they first came in and wanted to put 65 houses up on that ridge, which scared me a little bit, you know, but I talked to them because let's see, how would you describe where our house is? See where the pond is? Our house is the one to the right of that pond, so we look straight up that. And we have a big gap, and I had talked to him about it. I said, oh, it'd be wonderful to have some trees in there and things like that. And I have to say, as a developer, they've been really very open to things that are going to look good from all vantage points.
That's
You know,
nice.
so I really felt like as a resident, I was heard. And and I also know as a landowner, it can be really frustrating when you have all of these things in the way. So I really, all that I wanted to say tonight was that, you know, I really am grateful for, you know, what the city has done and what the developer has done in preserving this, because it's absolutely beautiful. I actually sent to your email some of the, you know, this property, having this open space will preserve some of the wildlife that we have out there. We have sandhill cranes, we have, you know, herds of deer, we have eagles sometimes that come in. It's gorgeous, you know, so seeing more open space is always welcome. And it's something that really, we left Woodbury because it was just getting so busy and so compact. And when we found this property, it just felt like we had found a home. You know, it's just one with nature and just very beautiful. And it's nice to see that you guys have worked really hard to maintain that beauty. So at first I was concerned with that property edge coming way down. And then when I saw the revised map, I was like, oh, okay, that's basically going to be a little bit of that preserved farmstead. In fact, are they going to still farm on that? Oh, okay. I was just curious what that was going to turn into. All right, so that's all I wanted to say, but thank you all.
Thank you very much, Ann.
Thank you, it's nice to hear.
Please.
My name is Ken Maas, and I live at 2397 Hines Avenue. We're off on the lower left-hand corner, kind of by the pond area down there. Kind of watched this whole thing develop from when it was there, all the homes and everything, and then moving around, figuring out the septic and all that and everything. And I just want to commend Paul. We've called him with questions. He's always answered our calls and given us the information we wanted. I feel he's listened to you guys and has answered all of your questions. I'm really pleased with how this is turning out. Thank you.
Excellent.
Great, thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Right. Any other comments? All right, with that, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
No, motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second, and it's 8.
Call a question.
Call it, thank you.
I'm gonna get a big old sign for you.
I know, I need it, and just flash it on the screen. All in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
All right, with 8:19, the public hearing is closed. And with that, if we can get the motion back on the board, the recommendation,
Move to recommend the city council approve the rezoning preliminary plat and variances requested by Rachel Development for the Highpointe Crossing project based on the findings of fact and recommend conditions of approval listed in the staff report.
Chair and Commission, I should just clarify that the recommended motion does not include the landscaping variance, just so that we're all clear of what that first recommendation.
Say that one more time.
I just want to clarify that you're not looking to recommend approval of the landscaping flexibility as well. That was one of the variances staff did not recommend approval of. I just want to make sure we clarify that motion.
that would be the
That's the second part.
The second of the 3 variances, correct.
Okay,
I'm going to stick with my move to recommend.
all right.
I will
Do
second.
I have a second?
Yep.
And then we can move to discussion on the motion that's on the table.
I'm totally
start.
fine with the landscaping. I totally believe that these people that are building these properties are going to put in a bunch of trees and landscaping on their own. It's an open field right now. I'm not worried about them landscaping and adding trees. I see.
I was
That's
just,
the-
I
that's-
think the clarification that I received was that it was intended to be, that landscaping variance was intended to be part of your motion to approve, so,
Okay.
that's what I'm hearing, or I heard based on your clarification. So, and then the rationale you're providing is that.
These homeowners are spending a lot of money on their properties. They're gonna be landscaping like crazy. They're gonna add trees to block their neighbors, to block everything. And they'll probably come in with big established trees, not just plant the little ones. They'll have the money to do it. I love what you've done. I mean, this is just a huge improvement, and I think that the neighboring developments are very appreciative of this. This is a significant improvement. Thank you.
So I just want to be clear on the motion that's on the table right now. Is it as it's been read?
Correct, yep, and it sounds like that was the intent as well, so,
Okay,
yep.
all right. So we're all clear.
And that also allows them to do the 50-foot setback versus the 120?
So, I appreciate that you asked the question on that, so that's not part of what was included in the staff report, only because we didn't know that was being requested at the time. Now, if the city wanted to approve the front yard setback flexibility, there are two pathways for that. One is a variance. The way that we issued the public hearing notice would not preclude tacking on like a fourth variance. I do pause though to recommend that as a best practice for you, just because I think it's a little bit more difficult to make that practical difficulties finding that. I think in that case, the developer would, he could do 100, but he'd prefer to do 50. I think the better path forward is actually a code amendment for the residential estate zoning district, so that not only this project, but others in the community that have a residential estate zoned property would also have that flexibility. So that's the other pathway. Typically, that would be the better practice, just because, again, it's not limiting that flexibility to this one project. If it's acceptable here, it may be acceptable in other circumstances, but, planning commission certainly can make a recommendation for how to proceed.
I've got a question about that because they did it at Whistling Valley.
I think that Whistling Valley was part of an OPPUD, so through the OPPUD process, they would have received that flexibility. So we're straight zoning here.
Either or a variance or zoning would require a separate public hearing.
Right.
To address this issue specifically.
Not necessarily, because the way that we noticed the public hearing, we did say variances. And you could, technically speaking, you could add that on.
We could add that request for variance into this motion.
Correct.
Okay.
No.
So would we
Like to do that.
Jane would
I'd like to
amend.
offer them that.
like to
because I think
amend,
that's very
you'd
nice.
like to amend
Yep, I'd
the
like to
existing
amend,
motion
yep.
to include the 50-foot setback variance?
And does somebody want to, I don't know if we need a second on that?
I'll second that, I assume we would.
Okay.
The planning commission in its discussion, as staff would just appreciate some discussion on the rationale for your support of the variance. What it will look like moving forward if the vote, if the motion is adopted, is that staff would have to bring to the city council a report with complete with findings of fact to support approval of all the different variances. We're now at 4. And so I would appreciate just some discussion on the rationale. What makes this site relatively unique, perhaps? Or what are the circumstances that you think support the variance?
For me, it's to work with the topography of the land that's already there to the best environmental use of it.
It's also, for me, it's also the distance between the house locations is much greater than a lot of other lots. So you don't end up with rather large houses set far back and they are awkward. You can have more of a neighborhood feel following the topography.
But there's still a lot of space between
There's
the
still,
houses.
there's still a lot of space between them, but it's not when you get into some of the other larger developments where you end up with a house on an island kind of effect and it's very uninviting.
Also less impervious on the site
Yeah.
with a shorter driveway.
Yeah, and to address the other variances, the setback for the farmstead residents, I think that's a no-brainer.
That's a
Yeah,
no-brainer.
for sure.
And then sidewalks on one side of the street, this neighborhood doesn't need sidewalks. I mean, as you discussed about, comparable neighborhoods and the layout.
And then, I believe you've got the understanding for the trees. We all have a pretty good sense that this is gonna be, anybody who's going on that lot's gonna plant more than 3 trees.
A lot. They're gonna be,
Yeah.
that's a cornfield, so they'll be planting a lot.
And really, the only other place for trees would be on the outside property lines or along the storm ponds, which could be problematic for easements and other, because there's a lot of trees packed right on the boulevard.
Are we done? Any other comments?
I love it.
was
I'm
good.
really, really love
Nice
it.
job. We're gonna miss you.
Yeah,
You can come back and visit.
yeah.
Did a nice job.
Yeah, really, thank you for sticking with us.
And, and thanks for trying the open
And
space.
and thanks to the
PUD too.
homeowner, the property owner, for being so patient with the city. Appreciate that, too.
I think that in that,
Thanking you for being patient.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for hanging in there with us.
the open space PUD may not have been successful, but it all teaches us to work through the challenges and the opportunities that present that. We all come away as a stronger commission, as a stronger city, when developers stay at it and continue to work through the problems. It helps us all learn and at the end of the day, come out with a better product for everybody. So I appreciate sticking with it. Thank you. With that, we'll call the question motion on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? And that sounds like 7-0, that this passes. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is new and unfinished business, which there's nothing on the agenda showing that there's there.
Correct.
All right. And then following that would be communication updates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Firehouse Minor.
Let's take a minute, we'll let everybody leave the room. I'm sorry, Sophia.
Hey, guys, we're trying to finish up a meeting. If you just
Yep,
wanna
if
step
you
in the
guys can
hallway.
take the conversation in the hallway, please. Thank you.
Like we should have cookies and coffee in the lobby.
That's Jason's responsibility. All right, back to communication update. Sophia, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Firehouse Minor subdivision, which is for the old Fire Hall and Parks building, was approved at the beginning of March. And then Grand Via, which is the OP, PUD, and preliminary plat, was approved at the last city council meeting, April 7th. Upcoming meetings, April 27th and May 11th.
Very good. And as we found out that the short-term rental zoning text amendment will be presented to city council on their meeting on May 5th.
Correct.
That's correct. And with that, we will adjourn the April 13th, 2026 meeting of the Lake Elmo Planning Commission. Thank you all.
All right.